Will you typically look down for the comments?
Yeah, I will. Hey, so we're live.
Nice.
Welcome to the Listen to This Bull Show. My name is Matt Mulholland. I'm here with Taylor Ammons.
Ammons. Close, we got it.
That was like the most. It's like taking Italian and giving it like a redneck accent.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's exactly
Buongiorno.
Well, that's why people think
Ammons.
my name's Tyler because I said Taylor, but it's Taylor, but I say it like Tyler.
I thought it was Tyler for a minute too.
Yeah.
Luckily, I spelled it right when I put it on here.
It's just how I talk.
So this is the Listen to This Bull Show. We talk about bullshit in the insurance world on here, and today's topic is all about perception. Who is the good guy? Who is the bad guy? And why do we keep fighting? And we can get off topic if we need to, but that's based on you guys in the commentary. If you don't give us comments or questions in the commentary section, then we won't have anything to talk about. We're just going to blabber on while I drink. And that's not cool. We want a show that's participatory. There we go. All right. Let me run this. Okay, Tyler, this is the first time you've been on the show. We happen to be standing in Matt Danskin's studio. He's not here. Yep. He'd rather be on a date with his wife than hanging out with us.
Yeah. Well, technically Tuesdays are my date nights too.
Really?
Yeah.
Am I your date right now?
You technically are. You technically are. I'm going to go home and cook a wonderful dinner for my wife. And
I need to drink a little bit more before anything happens.
Well,
right?
You know what? It's either you or the hat. One of them's coming home.
Please don't mess up my hat.
But no, it's great to be here.
Yeah.
It's really good.
Tell me a little bit about what you do in this industry.
Well, I own Paragon Roofing here in Nashville, and licensed contracting firm here in the state. I started out, worked with another company in the area, and never really had the intention of going out on my own. But you know, the company I was working for, they did good work. They were a reputable company in the area, but I just kind of hold myself to a higher standard when it comes to the way that my jobs flow, the way that my processes go. And I just really wanted to be able to bring something different and unique to the market. And so that's what I did. I started getting up early in the morning, working to build my company, and then was finally able to go out on my own almost 2 years ago now.
So what was different and unique?
The name definitely.
Hopefully more.
Yeah. Well, we're looking to really bring, I mean, the company I was with did very little sort of like automation stuff. I want to really streamline the process. And, you know, in our industry and in our day and age, people can just literally get on their phone and DoorDash some food and have to have very little human contact. So I'm trying to bring technology into roofing in our area and also just to make a fun experience, but with amazing products and services.
So do you think that human contact or lack of human contact is actually a good thing for the industry or a bad thing?
I mean, I just think that's where it's going with technology, because I think there's so much nowadays that people don't really need to have face-to-face conversations with. I mean, you know, COVID showed us with Zoom and things like that what all we can do just through computer screens, TVs, and cameras and things like that. So it's nice to be able to at least be able to have the old school approach where we can come out, meet face-to-face, shake a hand, but also have abilities that, you know, we can just do stuff over the computer, phone, and things like that. And people can just be in the comfort of their own home.
Doing stuff over the phone. In the comfort of your own home, wearing whatever it is that you're wearing.
Whatever it is, or not wearing.
It depends on the activities that you're doing over the phone or over the internet.
That's it.
Yeah. So today's topic was something that I meant to have Remington on here to ask him a ton of questions. Remington got caught up in a court case. So I was lucky enough that Taylor, who says Tyler when he says his name really fast, was able to join us abruptly. So you don't even really know what you're getting into right now.
I'm here for it though. We'll make it work.
Conversation is revolving around perception. Mm-hmm. So there is a perception that public adjusters are greedy and that contractors always want a full roof replacement, always want as much as possible. Mm-hmm. And then there's perception on the opposite end where the insurance company is evil and the adjusters are immoral or unethical, and vice versa. And I really would like to have a conversation about what that really means to the average claim, how that really affects the average claim.
Mm-hmm.
And then possibly if there is any solution or a route out of that basically stereotyping.
Mm-hmm.
It's what would be the equivalent of racism in this case? We would call it claimists.
Claimists,
adjusters,
some sort of prejudice towards adjusters
right.
and adjustments,
right? Or carrier versus policyholder advocate, right?
Correct.
So I don't know what you would call that.
And
if
then
you guys
a
have
policyholder stuck in the middle.
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
Very often,
mm-hmm.
Rock in a hard place.
Yeah,
it's not a good place to be.
Right. Well, and then you have the carrier on one side putting words in the policyholder's ear, the contractor on the other side. And then, so there's obviously that push and pull of who to really trust.
Right.
So the burden's really on us as contractors as well as public adjusters to be as upfront and honest and make it all make sense to the homeowners and pretty much get over those objections ahead of time and let them know, hey, this is what your carrier is probably going to do. Or in my experience, I've seen this is kind of some things that are done. You know what I mean?
Right.
But as far as the perception of greed with public adjusters and with contractors, I mean, I can see it in the industry for sure. I mean, I think contractors need to do a much better job of just being honest and operating with integrity. And
I'll bring it back a little bit because you mentioned this and then I got caught up in my head about it. But the policyholder stuck in the middle and they don't know who to believe. Do you think that a policyholder is more likely to believe the carrier that is taking their money and putting out advertisements that says that you can trust me over and over again? Or are they more likely to trust and believe the contractor that just knocked on their door?
Oh, 100% the insurance company, for sure. I mean, plus that relationship has been in place for potentially 30, 40, 50 years.
I agree. So let me ask you this then. Yep. If you're a contractor knocking on a door and you tell the policyholder, the homeowner, that their insurance company is going to treat them poorly or is it going to deny your claim or something along those lines, what do you think is going through the mind of the homeowner at that moment?
I think they're probably looking at you and questioning your credibility. Why did you knock on their door and slam their insurance company?
I agree.
That's what I would
I agree. Know. And you don't know. You don't know what's going to happen. You have experience. You know that things do happen from time to time. You know that there could be a situation where the carrier may act inappropriately, but for the most part, you don't know that's going to happen. So don't tell them that's going to happen. This is 101 stuff, guys. Don't tell someone that the decision they made when they purchased their home or when they changed insurance companies, the decision they made to hire this company and give them their money and trust in this company was a bad decision. Mm-hmm. People don't want to know that they made a bad decision. If they bring up that there's a problem, then you could say something.
Correct. Yeah. Right. You know, and even I see the same things like with carriers like Allstate, you know, when I would go door to door with guys and somebody, hey, who's your insurance company? And they would say something like Allstate. And then they would give them that, you know, I give every carrier the benefit of the doubt when I'm doing door to door. And I just say, that's a wonderful insurance company. And I'm sure that you are in good hands.
Well, I don't know if it's like the opposite of defamation. I don't know if we have to talk them up, but we definitely don't need to redress them in advance.
Right.
So I think that creates a perception among policyholders that there is this animosity. And if the insurance adjuster comes out and let's say you're wrong, you're the contractor, you're wrong, there's no actual damage or there's no coverage in this policy. You don't know your contractor, how the policy is written, and they're all very different, guys. They're very different. But let's say you don't know, you're making some assumptions and the adjuster's right. But you have convinced the policyholder that adjuster is going to lie to them in advance. Now that adjuster has one hell of a job ahead of them.
That's true.
They have to say no to somebody. They don't want to say no to people.
Yep.
No one wants to do that. They have to say no to somebody and they have to overcome the idea that they're being lied, that they're lying.
Mm-hmm.
No one wants to do that. No one wants to be the bad guy. No one believes that they're a bad guy.
Well, and that's something that I've thought about too with contractors, and especially with the knowledge that I've been developing within the policy space and things like that, is I think contractors need to choose their words very wisely, because I was in an auto owner's policy 2 days ago that said it was a policy provision that the homeowner file a formal notarized proof of loss within 60 days of their loss. Well, when I was just doing contract work door to door, you know, that's something I would have never known.
No, and a lot of times, especially in the auto owner's policy, it doesn't necessarily say upon a request. Now, state statutes, state laws might make it upon a request automatically, but if the carrier were to say that it was prejudicial to them, that they didn't receive that and their claims decision was wrong as a result of the lack of that form, then there could be a problem.
Yep.
And with auto owners, at least in Georgia during Hurricane Michael, when the initial inspection was happening, the adjuster was out there the very first time, they would hand them a proof of loss form, a blank one. If they're handing them a proof of loss form, is that a request for a proof of loss?
I would say 100%.
Right. And so if you don't perform that, then they have requested it. Have you failed to meet the conditions of the policy? There's so many dude, policies, guys, they're wildly different. Even if you're a contractor, I think that you should learn how policies are read. I don't think you need to advise policyholders about what is in their policy, but you need to understand when something's not quite right. So you could at least tell somebody, maybe you should get a professional involved or something along those lines.
Yep.
I got Tony Trulio on here. Hey, what's up, Tony? Chris Calfo, and Javier. How's it going, guys?
No more door knocking in Florida. Oof.
I don't think that that's accurate. There was a law that passed in Florida, but the portions of the law that talk about this were challenged as unconstitutional. And that is now a section in the bill or the law that is not enforceable. So I don't know if it's come out fully the other end saying that it's unconstitutional. I think it has, but I'm not positive. Either way, currently, it's not an enforceable part of the law. What's stupid about that, though, if it is deemed unconstitutional, it's not like the entire law is negated. They don't just take it off the books. It's still there. But now you have to know that that section that's written into the law isn't actually enforceable in the law.
Interesting. And they probably don't try and push that and make that public.
They don't want to make that public. Unconstitutional. No, and clearly even people in our industry who have been on shows like mine where I've said this before, the information isn't getting out.
Right.
So
can we go back to something that you said about contractors should have a good understanding of policy?
I agree.
Can we touch on that for a minute? Because I mean, I actually went and got licensed in property and casualty insurance just to get a firm understanding of that. And do you think that contractors, if they're going to do insurance restoration work, should get some sort of certification in insurance to understand what exactly policies may or may not cover? Or do you think that's something that eventually should be required for contractors that are going to do any sort of insurance work? Because I know where I stand on that.
That's a really good question. There's a lot to unpack there, and it's going to be state specific. But let me try to let me give you a few different scenarios and how that might work out the way that I'm seeing it. Hey, April, by the way, is an insurance adjuster, and she is an excellent insurance adjuster.
April. I met her at RoofCon.
Yeah,
April's she met my wife too.
Yeah,
yep. She's been busy.
Yeah. Hey, she works for Allstate.
Nice.
Right. So the next time you guys say some shit about Allstate, April's going to jump down your throat.
Yep.
Because it might not be true.
That's why I speak up on Allstate, because I got April's back.
That's right. That's right. We got to stop this perception. And that's what this show is all about. The perception of the opposite side. Are we the bad guy? And in many cases, we just might be. So to answer your question, though, in many states, if you were to get certified in some way saying that you understood insurance policies, I doubt that would ever become a requirement of handling a claim because the contractor isn't supposed to be handling a claim anyway.
True.
What you can do is provide a bid and investigate whether or not a roof needs to be replaced, something along those lines. In every state, you can do that as a contractor. In In some states, it's a little bit more restricted on what it is that you can say. I don't know of any state where it would be okay for you to advise the client or represent the client on an insurance claim or on their policy language without either being a licensed public adjuster or a licensed attorney. So either you're practicing the public adjusting without a license, unlicensed practice of public adjusting, UPA, whatever you want to call it, or UPL, unlicensed practice of law. How come we say UPA or UPA, but we don't say UPL?
I like UPL.
UPL sounds awesome.
I think we just coin UPL.
UPL.
It's UPL.
If you are practicing UPL, then you could get in trouble. And Eric just said some shit about Allstate.
Uh-oh. He did say don't say some
Well done.
shit about Allstate.
Well done. I think April is a good sport on this stuff, luckily.
I think so.
So if I don't think it should ever be required that a contractor that handles insurance claims, because they don't necessarily know that there's an insurance claim involved. A lot of policyholders will contact them. Now, if they do know, and if they're seeking out insurance work, do I believe they should get some? Absolutely.
I agree.
If you're going to be involved in a claim and put yourself out there, especially if you're putting yourself out there as like an insurance specialist or something along those lines, I got to tell you what drives me nuts, and here's more perception. What drives me nuts is seeing that on the side of a truck. Because
what about claims specialists?
Claims specialist, any of that.
Is that up of violations?
Well, in some states it is actually, but
I've heard that.
In many states it might not be, or at least it's vague enough. But the problem is, my own perception of that is that there's a brand new guy that just got into the business a month ago, and he's putting himself out there as being a claims expert or a claims specialist or an insurance specialist. And the policyholder or the homeowner that's hiring them is assuming that this person knows everything that they need to know in order to make sure the claim goes well. In reality, that person probably doesn't.
So contractors should probably be more honest and just say, we are not experts in policy. We're not experts in insurance. We're experts in construction codes and construction practice.
Yeah. In fact, you should say those things and say that you have some experience in doing these things and you can help out. But if there is ever the time where you need to get an expert in that involved, I'm not it. I can help you find somebody possibly. I might even be able to recommend someone to you, but that's not me. So I'm not a big fan of it saying claim specialist on the side of the truck. I understand from a marketing perspective that might be a really valuable thing to put on the side of the truck. And I'm not trying to say that you're wrong or you're bad for doing it. In some states it might be okay, but that's a perception, and that's the point of this show. The insurance company believes that you're greedy and that you're full of shit. And it has a lot to do with the storm chasing mentality, the SVG type mentality in groups, the public adjusters that write, we're going to maximize your claim. That perception makes them bitter against you automatically. This is a relationship business. If you can't have a good relationship with the opposition to work with them hand in hand, you're going to have a hard time.
I agree.
How do you get past that? Is it getting worse, do you think?
I think it's definitely getting worse. I mean, it's way too easy to start these roofing companies. I think that's where it kind of starts, is how easy it is. Because in majority of states, I think where you're from,
Georgia, there's no license at all.
In LLC, LLC, a little bit of insurance, and you're rocking and rolling. And I think that's actually hurting the industry, and it's hurting companies that want to grow and scale, because all of a sudden a guy gets in and he's selling $150,000, $200,000 a month, and then he realizes his company is making 30%, he's making 10, so he goes out on his own. I did that, and I'll tell you what, I got a nice awakening when I went out on my own. There's a lot that goes on behind closed doors that these sales reps don't understand.
It's absolutely true. I can't tell you how many off the record conversations I've had with adjusters, because when you get good with them, they have a lot of conversations with you that they don't want to be public, and you gain a lot of information on how to handle some ins and outs and things. And the perception is that you're greedy, and it has a lot to do with the fact that you're looking for every supplemental item possible to throw in your estimates. You're arguing over the same thing over and over again, and to a roofing contractor, every roof is replaced. You want a full roof replacement every single time. What would happen if, as a contractor that normally goes for that, suddenly you said to an adjuster, I don't think this one needs to be replaced as a whole. I think that we can repair this one.
I think the adjuster might have a stroke. And I've had those conversations with adjusters. I've even gotten up on roofs with adjusters and said, hey, look, the homeowner insisted to file this claim. I had it happen the other day with a traveler's claim.
Yeah.
I got up there. It was literally snowing on us. The adjuster was shaking, putting his goat together. I gave him some gloves. And I was like, hey, I'll hold your ladder. If you got any questions, I said, it's not a jaw-dropping inspection. When you get up there, I said, there was some imperfections in the shingles that were consistent with hail, but it was not obliterated, in my opinion. He marked up 10 on the front, 10 on the back, 10 on the left, and full replacement. And I would not have thought that claim should have even been filed. The roof was only about 7 years old. And one thing I've noticed, we had a nice hailstorm in 2021 here. Roofs 0 to 10 years old that I got on, I felt were almost practically no damage. Over 10 years old, 10 to 15, obliterated. Once they had a little bit of age, UV degradation, things like that, they were getting obliterated by this 1 1/4 inch, 1 3/4 hail. And I understand density, things like that matters a lot with hail damage.
Look, as far as hail goes, the research that's out there, it's all bullshit. It's all bullshit. It's assumptions. It's we can only control certain parts of the environment, and we can't test things in real world conditions.
Yep.
And so it's all bullshit. It's approximations. It's not reality.
Yep.
And that is a big problem. And IBHS, a research firm out of Florida that is paid for by insurance companies, recently published some information that soft hail that basically becomes it compacts on impact and spreads. It's almost like a slush ball, the way it would hit and stick to something. That causes a different profile of damage than a hard spherical stone. What impact damage that we're expecting based on all the research that has been done prior to that from Hague and Donan and other firms, one that I brain fart, doesn't matter. What they're expecting to see isn't happening in most cases, because in most cases we have that soft, slushy hail impact, and it causes a different profile of damage, mostly granule loss.
Yep.
But because they're looking for the kind of damage that occurs from a solid sphere, they're not seeing that in the field, and they're misdesignating what their blemishes and stuff as not damage, and it's just not true.
Yep.
It's all bullshit is what it comes down to. Now, that was published. IBHS says that granule loss that exposes bitumen is still damage. In fact, they didn't specify functional. They just said damage. So the insurance companies pay for that, by the way. So find that report. It's really good. April says she has a perception as a consumer. I get that perception from those tactics. The perception of insurance adjusters or perception of public adjusters. I can tell you, I think she's talking about public adjusters or contractors. I get the perception.
Yep.
As someone that in a way, and I never meant to be this, but in a way, to a lot of adjusters, I represent public adjusters as a whole. So they'll ask me questions about public adjusters. I've gotten into some fights on LinkedIn recently with Steve Badger and some other adjusters that are on there, and their perception is that I'm being ridiculous, that it's unreasonable what I'm asking or what I'm saying is damage. The problem is that we're talking about a contract, and contracts are not something that you apply the spirit of the law to. Contracts are very specific.
Do you think they get upset because public adjusters are holding them accountable to the contracts that their companies created and signed?
I think they're getting upset because the public adjusters and the contractors are more sophisticated in their arguments than they used to be. But we do go too far at times. I'll give you an example. This happened when I was with the National Claims Institute. I had a public adjuster class, and there was one public adjuster that came in that was explaining to us the argument that he was making about cosmetic damage. The policy said that they excluded cosmetic damage caused by hail to metal roofing components.
Hmm.
And he said that his argument was that the steel panel wasn't metal.
Interesting.
It's an alloy.
So that sounds like a stretch.
Right. So I told him I probably wouldn't make that argument, but interesting. I don't
Any case
know.
law on that?
I highly doubt it.
I would think not.
Highly doubt it. Although I would be willing to bet that the carrier would be willing to go all the way with that one.
And I think the carrier wins that.
I think so too.
Yeah.
I don't see any jury on the planet saying, well, it's clear that there's some ambiguity here. Steel is obviously not metal.
Right.
I don't see that happening. So anyway, this is the kind of shit that happens, though, that doesn't make sense from our side, that gives us a perception of greed. Let me say this as well. Contractors make more money if there's a full roof replacement than a repair.
True.
Most of the time. Public adjusters, if we have a contingency fee, make more money if there's a full replacement or if there's a larger claim. Is that part of the problem? Would it be better for us to be paid hourly or flat fee so that the perception isn't that we're just trying to drive our fee higher?
Who pays that?
Policyholder.
So the policyholder pays a public adjuster to come in, maybe, but then you may have, because a contractor is still going to be able to set their own price and name their own price within reason. So I could see the quality of public adjusters declining if you went and started to do that, because you would probably have a lot of public adjusters that would say, well, I'm not doing this. I'm just going to go do contract work, or I'm going to be a consultant or an expert witness or something like that for any sort of legal firms and things like that. I mean, I could see a decline in public adjusters if you went to put those constraints on them.
I mean, this is part of the conundrum. I believe that it is part of the problem. It is part of that perception. If we didn't have a contingency fee, then it would be hard for them to say that we're greedy. Because if we made the same amount of money either way, then we're not necessarily being greedy. It would be obvious that we were fighting for our client better.
Correct.
But the fact that we make more money if we win this other argument gives them a perception of greed. However, a policyholder generally would not be able to hire us without that contingency agreement. The contingency allows it to be something where they're going to receive a benefit before owing anything. And that's hard to do, because you would basically confine all the policyholders that normally couldn't afford it to not being able to utilize the services of a public adjuster necessarily. Not being able to use the funds themselves to pay for the use of a public adjuster is a whole nother concern.
Right.
But it is interesting. So if there's any public adjusters watching this right now, if you don't work on a contingency, if you only work on a flat fee or an hourly, and I'm not talking about the kind of hourly where magically it becomes 10% of the claim anyway. If you legitimately work on hourly or something, comment on here. I'd like to know how that works out for the average claim.
And do people know a big enough of a difference for you to be beneficial and say, well, I'm an hourly public adjuster. I don't have a percentage of your claim. I'm hourly.
I'd like to, maybe April can answer this, but I'd like to know if the adjuster on site found out that the public adjuster was working on an hourly or a specifically more often than I'd like to know if the adjuster found out that there was a flat fee involved. If they were more likely to believe what the public adjuster is saying or not on an individual claim basis, not as a whole, which is what I was really describing before. April says door knockers and PAs that claim getting stuff 100% bought, or they'll get more than anyone else. Really? There's PAs that do that?
The claim getting 100% bought.
100%. I've had contractors that recommended my services before where they told the policyholder, I guarantee you that he will be able to win your claim.
Interesting.
Right? And I talked to one of those policyholders and I said, that's false. Before you sign that contract, I want you to know there's no guarantees whatsoever. I don't win every claim. They probably said that to get you to talk to me. I'm going to have a conversation with them because that's crap. And that person said to me, yeah, I didn't think that was true. I mean, I'm an attorney and I can't say that to my clients. An attorney? You fell for that as an attorney?
Wow.
Yeah, I just, oh my God. And I did have a conversation with that contract. You can't do it. A public adjuster cannot guarantee anything. You can't say that you win 100%. That's ridiculous.
Well, and do contractors need to tread lightly on when they're deciding to refer a public adjuster in? And don't some states prohibit contractors from bringing up that they should get a public adjuster involved?
All right, so that's kind of gray. In that same Florida statute we said that was unconstitutional, that part of it is also part of the unconstitutional, not enforced section of it. Okay. So in the state of Florida, you can recommend a public adjuster. You should recommend more than one in the state of Florida. You should have a list of at least 3. And in some other states, it might be sticky for you to recommend a specific attorney or a specific public adjuster. It's a good idea to give them a list. I don't know of a state where you can't say it might be a good idea for you to get a public adjuster or get a professional involved that can help you better than me. I think that is in the clear in the vast majority, if not all the states. I think that's a smart move.
Yep.
Now, I just found out today after talking to you, looking at the state laws in Tennessee, that if in Tennessee, if you're a public adjuster and you recommend the use of a specific contractor, you might be on the hook if that contractor doesn't perform the services in a workmanlike manner.
And then who's perceptive to that?
Did you even know that if you're a PA in Texas or a contractor in Texas?
Tennessee.
I'm sorry, Tennessee.
All T's.
Very different state. I was way off.
Yep.
Hey, Desiree. All right. I gotta.
Well, and
I'm loving the Steve Badger arguments. Your arguments make logical sense. Well, it's
Absolutely.
Easy to make logical sense when you're arguing something that has a written contract. It's hard to make logical sense when you're arguing fairness, which is where Steve was going. And those arguments actually led to this particular conversation. Is it fair? Let me give you guys the basis for the argument. Steve attached himself to another public adjuster that was saying that damage to polyiso insulation, to the paper face of the polyiso insulation underneath the membrane, is covered damage. And Steve was arguing that is ridiculous, that there's no damage caused by hail, even when the paper face is fractured.
And no reduction of R value.
And he was saying there was no reduction of R value. Now, we have lots of evidence that there is a reduction of R value. It is minuscule. It is super tiny. It is negligible, but it's measurable. And so for most states, the courts have defined direct physical damage, direct physical loss, to involve demonstrable, detrimental physical alteration to covered property. Demonstrable means it's demonstrable or measurable. Detrimental means it's worse than it was before. If there is a measurable amount, even if it's tiny, loss in R value, then there is a detriment to that paper face being fractured. I mean, the simple question is, can a fracture to any covered property not be considered damage? It's fractured. The word fracture is damage.
Correct.
But is it reasonable? At the risk of giving an argument to defense counsel, the policies pay to repair or replace the damaged property, and they owe for the amount that is reasonably necessary to repair or replace the damaged property. Is it?
And who defines reasonable?
Is it reasonably necessary?
Well,
I tell you what, if a contractor goes out and says, hey, listen, or really, I don't know if a contractor would do this. They would be shooting themselves in the foot. But if a public adjuster went out and said, I'm going to get this money for you, you don't really need to make these repairs. Aren't they basically saying that it's not reasonably necessary?
I would think if a public adjuster would say, you don't really need to do the work for now, I would think that probably wouldn't be necessary to even have a client.
No.
I wouldn't think.
Now, where this argument breaks down is the fact that if you do have fractures to polyiso insulation and nothing on the membrane, generally speaking, you'll also have damage to metal roof components and other things that are attachments to the roof that require you to get into the membrane. So there is probably some additional damages that need to be evaluated that's going to force you into this situation anyway. Mm-hmm. And there's probably going to be areas on that roof, if you don't inspect the entire thing, where that damage is much more severe mm-hmm. than in the middle of the field, like in the cant strip areas or something along those lines. So yep. I don't think that you should walk away from it just because there's polyiso damage and nothing to the membrane. You just need to do a better job of investigating, and there might literally be something that is reasonably necessary to be repaired or replaced. So is that a good argument for defense counsel? I am talking about how to evaluate the amount of loss for an RCV payment to a covered loss that already exists. You have to start with a covered loss to get to this portion of the policy anyway. Yep. So I don't actually think this is a good argument, but it's a good thought experiment. Yeah. What's reasonably necessary? No. Won't be any left. We're way behind.
Well, and really, do you think so your understanding of that would be if you do have some fractures to the polyiso, look deeper into the claim, look deeper into the loss, look deeper into the damages, and don't let some fractures to the polyiso be your only argument going against policy.
I agree.
Makes complete sense to me. Do you think it would really, by having some minor fractures in simply the polyiso, maybe some minor dents and soft metals, do you think that would really shorten the life of a commercial roofing system in the grand scheme of things?
Having been on some older systems that have had historical hail events, I can tell you if ponding occurs in any way, especially to TPO, yes, water sitting on top of TPO degrades it rapidly. It's ugly what you see on TPO later in its life in the areas that had ponding. Now, are we going to have ponding in small circular areas like that that aren't considered to have positive drainage, meaning it dries up within 48 hours? Highly unlikely.
Right.
But wind that doesn't do too much damage, or any water intrusion that's a result of any wind or hail that hits a metal component that allows wind-driven rain in between seams, maybe where butyl tape has been split apart, something along those lines. If you get water intrusion into the system, absolutely it's important to deal with. Are fractures to polyiso all by itself a covered loss? Yes. Is it worth claiming? Well, I think there's a lot more to the story that you have to uncover.
Yep. Well, and another thing to think about too would be, okay, you have fractures to the polyiso. You know from roofs that you've been on that over the course of a lot of years where there is some ponding water, that it does have long-term effects on TPO, and you explain that to your policyholders. Are you greedy for wanting to fight it based off the fact that you know that storm has shortened the life of that roof?
If you truly do believe that, then I don't think so. But that's the thing. We can justify our actions very easily.
Yep.
I can justify the overestimating that the contractors are doing regularly because the line items that they're adding to them are justifiable line items. It doesn't mean that you don't get to the point where the overall price is ridiculous or unreasonable. I think we need to stick to that term, unreasonable. And even though it's this third-party program, you can put all these line items in and it spits out a dollar amount that you're not coming up with, and you're putting all the things in there that need to be there, that doesn't make the dollar amount reasonable. And we've bullshitted ourselves to believe that it is just because a third-party software says it is. That doesn't make it true. In fact, we talk about this program being inaccurate for a lot of different things that we put bid items for. Metal work on bay windows. if you put in per square foot standing seam copper metal, it's not going to work out to be the amount that it's actually going to require to have a company come in and replace that bay window. So we'll have a bid item for that section. So we'll say that that program isn't correct for this section.
Correct.
But then we're going to argue that it is correct for all these line items that are justifiable, but it spits out this 30% higher than the highest retail establishment in your area.
Mm-hmm.
Come on, guys.
So really, contractors should probably be more apt to trying to help Xactimate get their pricing right, because I know Xactimate pricing department is open to contractors being vulnerable and saying, you guys are wrong here. Here's where we're at. And they will go through and make those changes within those price lists. But contractors seem to want to just keep that in and just say their price is wrong. Here's our subcontractor bid. So contractors probably need to do a better job of working with Xactimate so we can help refine that program and make it better.
If you're a contractor and getting pissed off at us right now, understand that we're talking about generalized contractors.
Correct.
And I think that you would probably agree. I mean, if you just stop for a second being angry with us and think, yeah, there's some bullshit on our side too, guys. Mm-hmm. We want to eliminate that perception. April says, I think I'd trust a PA more if they weren't Nazis demanding everything. We're more friendly and less corporate-y.
I agree with that.
Or we're more friendly and less corporate-y. Not we're.
Well, it's almost like when roofers show up to adjuster meetings with their chest poked out.
Oh, yeah.
You know, the adjuster's going to flare
truck.
His. Yes.
Do you have a lifted truck?
I do not. It's a stock Dodge with tools all in the back.
I was really hoping you'd have a lifted truck. Suddenly.
No, I can install. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, there's an intimidation factor sometimes in the way. Look, your job isn't to go out there and save the policyholder from the evil insurance corporation. Let me tell you this also. Our perception of the insurance company is that they're evil, diabolical. They've got these giant groups of insurance companies that are getting together and planning out this imperceivable long-term scheme to defraud policyholders in order to benefit their shareholders. Mm-hmm. That's our perception. And there might even be evidence to suggest something like that happens. That's coincidental. I have been accused of similar things. And it kind of blew my mind. Rumors work in weird ways. Mm-hmm. People might assume that I've done something because I foresaw something major, because I'm some brilliant genius of some kind. I'm not. I know my industry. I have made knee-jerk reactions to things that in retrospect look like I'm freaking brilliant and saw some shit coming. And that doesn't mean that I did it that way. The same issue occurs for insurance companies. They might have done something as a reaction to things that we've done on our side that will appear down the road to have been a concerted effort to defraud people. That doesn't mean that's what actually occurred. It just means that it could be possible evidence of it, but it could be coincidental. Coincidences happen a lot.
Or honest mistakes.
That too.
You know, I've had adjusters call me out on Xactimates that I've submitted where I fat fingered a waste factor or something like that. And, you know, we kind of make a joke about it. And I'm like, yeah, I'll go in and get it corrected. And they say, get it revised, send it over, and we'll call it good. I mean, it doesn't have to be a super competition.
You don't have to fight on that. I've had plenty of times when I've met with an adjuster on site and I'm going through my estimate with him and I look at something and I go, you know what? I don't think we need this in here. And I'll mark it out and be like, I didn't write this. So bear with me. I might make some edits here because that doesn't seem right. Or that's the wrong line item. Mm-hmm. It's actually a lower one or something along those lines. And I like to point those out, the mistakes that we've made, because it makes them feel a little bit more at ease. Mm-hmm. If I point out the problems that I've had, or if I give away something, if we're on an interior and I say, listen, I want you to look up this stain. And they're like, oh, okay. I was like, I'm not claiming this, by the way. I just want you to see it. Policyholder told me it's been there for like 6 years. In case you need it for underwriting, there it is. You can have a pre-existing condition, kind of a photograph or something if you want. I'm just showing it to you. I'm not trying to claim that damage. I like doing that
Mhm.
because it changes the perception of me, at least in their minds, not public adjusters in
Yep.
general.
How many
I don't-
times do the carriers include that room?
Oh, never. They don't. No, they don't, because I'm not claiming it.
Mm-hmm.
I have had things where I've instead of saying we're not claiming it, I've said, I really don't know. It's possible it was caused by the storm, but
Yep.
it's possible it wasn't. It's up to
Mhm.
you. More often than not, they will put that in.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because
Yeah.
because I'm acting fairly. They're going to try to act fair with me.
Yep.
Tristan says that was our post. She's talking about the Rhino Public Adjusters post that Steve Badger was talking about. So yeah,
Oh,
that's whose post it was.
Mm.
I appreciate you mentioning that.
Yep.
This knowledge is priceless from that guy.
that guy.
I bet that guy is an adjuster.
I like that guy.
That guy is awesome.
That guy's not doing Upple.
I've done a couple of PA claims pro bono, and both claims were paid out without a fight. Everything I estimated, not a single question asked. The ones where I charge a percentage, no more than 10%, are usually not as quick and a lot more runaround. They're all handled and documented to the same degree. Well, Andrew, did you submit a contract or notify them that it was pro bono, or was this coincidental as well? Did you approach it differently because it was pro bono? Maybe you didn't fight as hard on certain things. I'm curious to see if you told them this and that's why that happened, or if it's just
I could see that.
other things. April says, you may not believe this, but all the PAs I see on these contracts or contacts, except 2 so far, are not responding to calls from the opposing adjusters or opposing appraisers, OAs, and causing delay in closing. Some demand only response by email, but then they don't respond to emails for days.
Garbage adjuster. Or busy.
What? Yeah.
Maybe he's taking on too much work.
That's a common problem among PAs.
But isn't there laws in public adjusting that you shouldn't do anything outside of what your scope of knowledge is? And would that not possibly include taking on too much work?
Maybe. I don't know of a specific law that goes down that road. I do know of some laws in some states that specify that you should not take on a claim that you do not intend to work. And then you have, there are some timeframes that you have to abide by, but understand that delay happens in insurance claims. And sometimes the delay is on you, not on the carrier. When they give you the ball and say, we need this, you have to give it back to them right away. Get the ball out of your hands. You don't want the ball. You want to give them the ball. You want the delay in their hands. Don't delay things. The faster you get the stuff that they need, the better. It's better to give them everything up front.
I've been at fault of that as a contractor.
I've been at fault of that as both a contractor and a public adjuster because you get busy. It happens, but this also happens to adjusters, and we can't get so mad at them for not responding if we're going to do the same thing.
Right.
We're in the same boat.
So you think there's some benefits to just showing all your cards, maybe holding 1 or 2 back, but just going ahead and giving them everything?
Yeah. So there's a few cases where I think it's smart from a strategy standpoint to get coverage first. If you know that this small amount of damage is going to lead to a massive repair, it's probably better to get them to agree to that damage first. But if it's obvious, then everything up front, there's no reason for the delay to be on your end.
Yep.
Everything, a proof of loss, all your evidence as much as possible. And if you need more later on, fine, get it to them as quickly as you can, but try not to be the reason for the delay, and try to be a human, right? You're dealing with humans. They make mistakes. They're not perfect. If it gets unreasonable, it gets unreasonable. There are some states where a technicality in how long it takes for an adjuster to respond could lead to a lawsuit that provides coverage. And in those states, public adjusters will file frivolous claims that have no damage whatsoever, knowing that as long as the carrier fucks up, they're going to win.
I want to say that Tennessee has some language that I've came across very similar to that.
Florida is one of those states. And you guys want to, all that shit in Florida, all the crap that's going down, we're a lot of the cause. Get your head out of the sand. More than just breaks to the ISO. There were several components that showed collateral damages.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yep.
It was actually the engineer that said he needed to open the roof to see direct hits to the ISO. Good for that engineer. That is unusual.
Testing.
Yeah. It's very rare that an engineer will specify that. So whoever that was, kudos to that guy and his company.
Love it.
Unless you hired that engineer, then that's kind of expected. For roof replacement, it's always necessary. I've been accused of this in depositions where I've had to explain that I've made repairs to roofs in the past, and that I will make repairs to roofs in the future. I think that there is a reasonable repair that can be done to a lot of different materials. I have had claims on commercial flat roofs that were many, many squares with small areas of damage, and the adjuster says to me, "I guess you want a full roof replacement on this." I said, "Oh God, no, really? No. Well, this is clearly repairable. We can repair that area over there, that area over there. All of this in between. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
I'm not a dick, dude." And he's like, "Oh my God, really?" I was like, "Listen, all this stuff over here has to be taken care of." And there was these spires with asphalt shingles on them. I was like, "Obviously, we're going to replace those. Those have a lot of wind damage on them." I was like, "Yeah." It's like, "I think our reserve needs to be somewhere in the 150 to 200,000 range. If you can set that there, I think that we're going to be able to get all the information to you, and it's going to end up somewhere in that zone. And so if we can set the reserve." Dude pulled me to the side with the policyholder and the contractor that brought me out too, and said, "This guy knows how to do his job. I don't know if I've met a better public adjuster." And that was what he said to me in front of the policyholder. I can't tell you.
Being a human.
I got so much work out of that policyholder. He had other buildings. It was worth saying, "Oh God, no." Could I have won that repair or replacement? It's possible. It depends on how the layers of the poly ISO are attached. If they're glued together, if they're fully adhered, then in an effort to not create thermal bridging, when I take the layer, I know exactly how to get that shit approved. All right, I know exactly how to do it, but it wasn't reasonable. Yeah, that would bug me. This is Andrew Adams. At the end of the day, as a PA, you're an adjuster as well and have to abide by state laws just like independents and staffers. I'll talk insureds out of using me if it doesn't make sense. An insured should in no way pay me 10% if the claim is obvious and going to get paid fairly without my involvement. If I'm involved, though, and someone reaches out, I have to respond in a timely manner. Yeah.
I like Andrew.
That was a very good response. Look at this. My audience is actually a bunch of reasonable people.
I like it.
If only we had more adjusters from the carrier side watching this show. April.
They know about it.
Tell them. Nothing is better than an understanding and relationship building opportunity.
Absolutely. And that goes further in just helping speed the process along anyways, because I know on the contractor side of things, if you want to be an asshole to adjusters, they'll stretch it as long as the state laws will allow them in certain cases.
Yeah. No,
that's not fair. And it's only delaying the policyholder to being indemnified.
It's true. I mean, there should be a specific time frame for response, but that time frame for response should be similar for a public adjuster or an insurance adjuster. In certain states, there is specific requirements that a public adjuster has to perform within a certain amount of time, just because they failed to do so in the past. Florida, for example, you have a certain period of time to submit a proof of loss as a public adjuster, or you're not doing your job. Is that bad faith? Can a public adjuster be accused of bad faith? I actually don't know the answer to that. I kind of wish Remington was on right now. We shouldn't answer that. That'll be Uppel.
Oh, yeah. We don't want Uppel. Not today.
Hey, Matthew. Hey. I'm going to have a respectful disagreement with April regarding the alleged tactics that we use. I've been a PA for a year and an IA for 7. I literally have had to fight for every cent for my clients. And most times it's been a lot of delay and deny tactics used by rookie DAs and ego-driven team leads. Cut the crap. You're not wrong. And that's the problem. You're not wrong, because it does happen. It happens. There are PAs that suck. There are adjusters that suck. What I'm trying to establish is that isn't always going to be the case. We can't stereotype these individuals just because they work for an insurance company. just because we are working for the client. The animosity between both sides is getting worse and worse and worse.
Daily.
And the more that goes on, the more that narrative is driven, the more the laws are going to get worse for public adjusters and contractors, because they're not going to go the other way for the carriers. There's just too much money involved in politics. The worse it's going to be for policyholder advocates as a whole. We have to do something about this perception. I don't know what it is. I have no idea what to do.
And that's stuff that I've toyed around with being a contractor is, do you just adopt retail models and just stick with your retail model and just let your customers know, have a good financing structure. This is what we do. This is what I can do to help you. I can give you all the documentation to handle it with your insurance company. And I need 50% at signing, 50% when we walk, and you handle the rest of it. I mean, there's things like that come up with contractors for sure. But in a lot of markets, and I don't see it in any foreseeable future, that you can get away in storm markets without being able to work with the insurance companies and the policyholders.
There are definitely some markets that are harder to work in as a public adjuster or a contractor. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that the laws in that area are not very policy friendly or policyholder friendly. Georgia obviously is one of those states, a state that I come from. Even in that state, I was able to build relationships with these adjusters. And my team I didn't do a lot of desk adjusting, but my team that did the desk adjusting was able to build relationships with the desk adjusters. Even in a state where the laws were tough. It's more difficult. I have to do my job better in that state because a carrier will be able to delay, deny, defend a lot easier. And that McKinsey model is a real thing. But it doesn't mean that it's always going to happen. We have to fix the perception of contractors and public adjusters in this industry somehow, or it's going to go away. I can't tell you how many times I've been asked the following question in the last 2 years. How long do you think public adjusters have in this industry? 5 more years? 10 more years?
Isn't that sad? That's even
a real question.
Because
it's obvious that that's where it's leading.
Yep.
How do we fix that? How do we stop the bleeding?
And that's a tough one because I know I recently got licensed as a public adjuster in Tennessee, and it was not easy to do. I mean, they go in, there's applications you have to do. There's multiple fingerprints that had to be done. They dig into your background, any sort of criminal history you have to divulge, felonies, things like that. If you had any, you have to divulge all that, full background checks. I mean, they're definitely not that strenuous on contractors. So, I mean, at what point? I mean, I felt like it was a very thorough investigation into who I was, but it's really hard to check morals and integrity.
And then someone on our side is going to feel super skeptical. That's not really the right term. You're very likely to feel I can't think of the word I want to say. Your perception of that is, why don't they spend this much time and effort investigating the damn loss instead of investigating me? And it's easy for us to say those things. I don't think that adjusters and insurance companies are as evil as someone like me might say regularly on a podcast or in a video, where it's easy for me to gain an audience by being inflammatory. And I don't do that to gain the audience. I really do have strong opinions. I have a clear bias against insurance companies. I recognize that. I'm not saying I don't. But I also recognize that I have a lot of friends on that side that are doing the damn best they can for policyholders, even with the constraints that they have. We have to improve the perception of public adjusters and contractors, or we're going to lose this industry. And everything's changing anyway because of AI. We need to find ways to change that perception. If any 100%. Of you know how we could go about doing that, I'm all ears. I want you on the show. I want you telling the world exactly what it is that we're going to do.
Yep.
Reach out to me. Email address is Matthew, spelled with one T, MATHEW, at listentothisbull.com. Let me know. It has been a whole hour. This has been a fun episode. April says she can't see all the comments, and that's because we're broadcasting to like several different platforms at the same time. So if they're commenting on that platform, they can only see comments from that platform. I know it's confusing. It's a pain in the ass. Yeah, there's a lot of questions still I'm not going to get to. We're going to have to wrap this up.
Mm-hmm.
Taylor, it's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. I had a great time.
Yeah, the back and forth was perfect.
Yep.
I'd like to have on again. Honestly, this worked out really well.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
If you guys are getting a lot out of this show, we could use your help. We don't make any money on this show, but we do have expenses. So on our website, listentothisbull.com, you can go to shop and you can buy merchandise. You can get t-shirts that have the bull logo on it. You can get a beer mug if you want to and have a beer with me during the show every day. This isn't beer, whiskey, a little bit harder today. No beers in sight. It's sad. Or you can donate to the show. We also do some consulting and private trainings. If you're interested, reach out to me, Matthew at listentothisbull.com. Thanks again for watching. We will see you next Tuesday at 6 p.m. Eastern. We have Doug Quinn coming on the show, and we're going to talk about whistleblower actions, how they're protected, what it is that we need to see from them, and hopefully we might be able to shake some of them out. Next Tuesday at 6 p.m. Tell everybody you know. I'll see you guys later. If you stand in a weird pose, it'll